Welcome to Aspire, and I Have the Right To podcast, where we amplify voices, share stories, and drive change in the fight against sexual assault. We explore the critical issues surrounding student safety, institutional accountability, and survivor empowerment. In every episode, our goal is to provide insightful conversations with survivors, experts, educators, and advocates, giving you, our listener, valuable information, resources, and actionable steps to create safer environments and cultivate a culture of respect and consent. Welcome to another episode of Aspire, Real Men, Real Conversations. I am, again, as always, I say at the beginning of these podcasts, very excited for today's episode because I'm joined by four just remarkable young men. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Hugh Eastman. Gabriel had another obligation, so he's not joining us today. But I'm also joined by three young men who I've had the pleasure of working closely with over the last several years. And I'm going to let my guests introduce themselves, but they're all juniors at Georgetown Day School here in Washington, D.C., and they are doing remarkable work. So first, I'm going to do the introduction. So Eli, why don't you kick us off?
Hey, I'm Eli, and I started working with Alex in around 8th grade. He was my neighbor and family friend, so I've known for quite a while what he's been doing. But as I've gotten older, I've realized that the work he's doing is more important, and I've really just started to grow connected to all this work, and I've started to just love being a part of the community that he's made.
Hi, I'm Nathan, and I met Alex in 8th grade when he spoke to our middle school. And ever since then, being a sports player and a brother and a son and a friend, I've noticed all of his words have such an impact and relevance in my life. And being able to work with I Have the Right To over the past couple of years has been so helpful. And being able to give advice and being able to help out the people I care about.
Hi, I'm Aaron. I'm also a junior at Georgetown Day School, and I met Alex in 8th grade when he spoke to our entire grade. And I thought I really connected with Alex and how he emphasized how men can help this issue and that it's not just a woman's issue, it's everybody's issue.
So thank you, guys, and it really is a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. And what I want to touch upon today, and Hugh, I will also lean on you to sort of help me sort of lead this conversation. So thank you, gentlemen, and it's been a real pleasure working with you over the last several years. Hugh, I'm going to lean on you a little bit with this episode in terms of helping us lead the discussion, but I want to talk about the journey that all four of you have been on as middle school and high school students that have been on this journey of listening, learning, and then saying, how do I convert that into action? And, I've seen you guys literally grow up in terms of your attitude, your desire to make positive change. And I think that would be a wonderful thing to sort of share with our audience, how you came to that realization that this is something you guys cared about, and then show our audience how you've put that into action in your different communities and all aspects of your life, whether it's your personal life, your family life, your friend groups, and even sort of the leadership roles that you've all chosen to undertake. But Hugh, given how closely we've worked on this podcast, and I know you've intersected with these young men at the internship in Washington, D.C., last summer. Can you talk to me a little bit about your own journey?
Yeah, so I feel like a lot of people on this podcast know this already, but I wasn't really exposed to this topic until high school. Coming from an all-boys school, I switched to Riverdale, my co-ed high school in 9th grade, where I kind of instinctively joined BLB, the Boys Leading Boys group that some of the alumni at my old school actually had been leading and who were seniors at Riverdale and who I had known from my time at St. Bernard's, which is my old school. And, I joined that club thinking it was kind of like an affinity group just to hang out with, people, other boys from all different grades, freshman to senior, and just to meet new people, honestly, because, I was new and in a new environment. But, as soon as I stepped into that club, I feel like conversations that I wasn't expecting started to come up. There was like the HOCO event, homecoming event, and until then, I'd never heard really of the idea of consent in like healthy relationships, and approaching that event where obviously it's kind of an off-campus party, obviously, where people are drinking and just navigating that. And I think I was newer to that in ninth grade, and just going off that, the whole rest of the year was filled with similar conversations that I hadn't heard of. Sexual assault, mental health in males, famous sports athletes who were dealing with mental health problems that I hadn't even known of, like Kevin Love, for example. And, from that, in 10th grade, I was inspired to go on this summit, the GDS summit, which is where I met Alex in a similar speech that all of you guys had heard, I guess, in 8th grade, you guys mentioned. But, I think one of you said all those topics kind of resonated with me. Similarly, I'm a brother, I'm a sports player, and also I think I just seen that culture around me, that culture of what we call socially constructed masculinity. Alex's words, I think, really resonated with me and inspired me to later ask him to intern with I Have the Right To that summer. Since then, I think it's been a journey with this podcast, like creating it, finding guests, appropriate guests from any kind of fields that would have experience with this topic, and hearing their viewpoints on it. I think I've heard now like a number of viewpoints in our 30 episodes that have been out. And, I've taken also this impact to my own school, leading the Consent Summit with Gabriel next year, which Alex spoke at this year. Is the first year that Riverdale hosted a Consent Summit, as well as leading BLB next year. But yeah, I think I went on for a while, but I guess that's my full journey with this topic.
Thank you, Hugh. And for you guys here in the studio with me in Washington, D.C., can you talk to me? Because I look back on it now, and it's hard to imagine. This is 4 academic years ago, right? 8th grade, when we did a presentation where you guys were all in that audience. Can you guys each talk to me about, the impact of that in your sort of daily lives, how you've been able to take some of that sort of messaging into your daily lives? So maybe I'll start with you, Aaron.
So the topic of socially constructed masculinity has resonated with me, and after that speech, I've thought about it throughout my day-to-day life through just the media, seeing stuff on television or on social media. I realized what was right and wrong, and how young boys are being sort of taken advantage of and brainwashed when they're growing up, when they're exposed to social media, such as Andrew Tate, for example, of socially constructed masculinity, and how harmful that is for a boy that is growing up to be a man, and how they're going to be experiencing tough experiences that they have to know how to navigate the world.
Yeah, like Alex was saying, we started in 8th grade, and we were pretty young when we started. I really didn't know what I was expecting when I first started. I didn't have a clear goal in mind of what I wanted to get out of this. And I think this lesson would help the world a lot if people realize that they don't need always a full plan when getting into stuff. Sometimes like he was saying, he had to step in the door to have those conversations, going into stuff without knowing what you're going to get, putting yourself in the opportunity to learn more and get out of what you would normally hear. I think that skill and lesson has helped me so much in my day-to-day life about trying new things, even if I don't know what's going to happen, and listening to other people because I don't know what I'm going to get out of it. And I think that has been the biggest impact of this on my life.
Yeah, I mean, for all of us, I think we can say that Alex came and spoke to us at a really good time. We were all in 8th grade, and that's a pretty uncertain time for a lot of guys. You don't really know what you're getting into with parties, drinking, And like, we really haven't heard a lot about anything like that at the time. And Alex kind of came in and gave a lot of good advice, and sort of helped us navigate through that. And after that talk, immediately, we couldn't see what he was talking about, but as the years went on, like more and more examples of what he warned us about and told us to look out for were coming up. And I thought he really just impressed us and was able to guide us through an uncertain time.
So one thing that we've talked about consistently, whether it's with you guys in our regular meetings, whether it's, Hugh and Gabriel through our continued work, and even with I Have the Right To's workshops that we do in schools across the country, what I find the common thread amongst all young men that we speak to is trying to get everyone to reconnect with who they are in their core, right? Because I think, Hugh, you said it wonderfully on an earlier podcast that, when we suppress who we are, it's sort of similar to swallowing a stone, right? And building more barriers and blockades, internally. And each time we're in a social situation where we think, whether it's peer pressure or whatever it might be, that we might act in a way that is not true to who we are, we can justify it to ourselves, right? Because, I'm just going to get through this, situation. I don't feel comfortable with this, but, I'm just going to get by. I don't want to cause trouble or whatever it might be. And each one of those is like, each time you do that, think of it as like swallowing a little stone. And you feel like, okay, I have the capacity and appetite to, swallow these things little by little, but they don't go away. They accumulate inside of you. And if I'm thinking about this process of, and the work that we do, working with young people and especially young men and boys, is to say, listen to all of this information, absorb all of this, intake it, but then for it to be manifest itself then in terms of actual behaviors and action out in the real world, you almost have to go through a little bit of a journey when you're in a situation, right? The more that you're in these situations, the more that you swallowed, maybe the journey from listening to something or seeing something in a situation and then doing that little quick journey to your core and reconnecting with who you are and understanding, is what I'm about to do consistent with who I think I am as a person, right? And that journey might be blockaded because we have so much junk inside of us, right? I'm going to put you guys on the spot with thinking a little bit about that and saying, does that sort of visual, does that have sort of meaning to you? And if you can tell me, maybe some examples of where you've seen maybe I haven't made the right decision because of different things that might be stuck, inside of me, if that makes sense. But I'm going to put Nathan on the spot as the first one I'm going to put that question to.
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy for masculinity. And I think a lot of the times when I'm with a big group of friends who are less educated, I feel like it's very hard to be like one against the crowd. And I find myself sometimes like feeling like this feeling like it's kind of perfect, like kind of feeling like stones in my stomach, like where I want to do something, but I'm a little scared of the reaction I might meet, And, but yeah, I think it's definitely important to recognize that the stones are there. Like everyone can like say like they exist, but recognizing like what they are in you and like how they are really like changing your life, like is the first step for everyone to like help get these stones out.
Yeah, like I can sort of agree with Nathan. Like I've been in big social situations with a lot of people who don't know a lot about the subject. And I felt kind of like, again, saying anything. Like I've been in situations where like guys will be talking to girls who have been drinking and they haven't had that much to drink themselves. And I feel a little uncomfortable and I've been too scared to say anything. And there's been a lot of like situations like that where you just know that person doesn't know a lot about that subject and sometimes their intent might be good and sometimes it might not, but you really can't tell. And in those situations, you should just step up no matter what.
Yeah, I think that's why socially constructed masculinity is such an important topic, because it really that analogy really shows how socially constructed masculinity censors your actions, censors how you want to feel, what you as a person wants to feel and do. So I think that's why it's really important. And every time that you fall into that trap of socially constructed masculinity, having that make you feel not who you are is really important to discuss.
So, Hugh, just for our audience's sake, Nathan, Eli, and Aaron are rising juniors in high school. They'll be starting school next week. Hugh, as a rising senior, having experienced a little bit more of that sort of awkwardness, right? Of finding your voice, understanding your identity, your values, and finding your voice in social situations. Hearing what the gentlemen here were talking about, what's your reaction to hearing what they said?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because something I noticed across at least what all three of them said was that a lot of the people around them just didn't really have an understanding or a thorough understanding to know what to do in these settings. And I was kind of thinking back to not only my experience with the GDS summit, but at our own Riverdale summit, I guess people had known that I had been working with you on the podcast and that I had known you, Alex, but people came up to me after and said, I'd never really heard of this. And I think people's perspectives were definitely shifted. And I feel like that's really the first step, because another thing is I can't say that I haven't also been in those situations where I think Nathan was saying how he feels like he has an understanding of this topic, yet it's hard to go against the crowd almost. And I think that's something every boy experiences in some way. I feel like what I take away from these experiences is that it starts with more of an education around this topic, which I feel like people lack. And it's almost stigmatized in a sense, when people hear the words like masculinity, femininity, and I don't think it should be. But in the most basic sense, I think that people need to be educated around these topics because, at our age, a lot of people are absorbed to media that really push the opposite.
So I'm going to shift the discussion now to the topic of, transitions, right? Because what we have with the GDS contingent here, you guys are transitioning from underclassmen to upperclassmen, right? You made the jump from 10th to 11th grade. So the totem pole, you guys are continuing to sort of climb it. And with that, if you look at this as a building block to your future adult life, right? You're going to be facing more and more transitions as you go forward, and they're going to come faster and with more, fierceness, right? And really what you're doing is practicing for real life going forward with each one of these transitions. So with all of that, to me, what pops up immediately is the topic of leadership, right? Because every time you move up to a new sort of level, it opens up opportunities, whether you guys realize it or not, for you guys to be perceived as leaders. By virtue of you going from underclassmen to upperclassmen, you guys are viewed more as leaders within the school, setting. And maybe that's a responsibility you guys don't want, you haven't asked for. But talk to me about what you guys think about the concept of leadership when it comes to the concept of aspirational masculinity and what ways that can be sort of reflected.
Yeah, I've been noticing this a lot, especially this summer, becoming an upperclassman. But I've been noticing I'm starting to recognize that my actions and how I live my life isn't just, I don't know how to say this, isn't just for me. You have a bigger impact on other people's lives than you think. like when you could do a small action, but for one person, they could like think about that action for years. Like when they're in an uncomfortable situation, they can think to themselves, oh, I remember when that upperclassman stood up to his friends when they were being jerks. And then that can motivate them. Like really one action can make the difference. And I feel like recognizing that and the power that you have to influence, especially when you're getting older, younger kids, and even kids your own age, is such a strong ability that everyone has and that everyone should be using for good.
Yeah, I think a positive role model for a young man is one of the most important things for them to have to grow up and for them to be the person that they will be. For example, all of us had a English teacher in 7th and 8th grade that knocked us back on track. We were kind of rebellious kids. We would do a lot of stuff, and he emphasized how our actions affect people, and that was really eye-opening for us, and that helped us take us to where we are now.
And Hugh, if you can sort of talk to us a little bit about, the concept of leadership and what that means to you and how it might be manifesting itself as you're looking into your senior year in high school.
Yeah, I mean, all my friends have been saying, like, I can't believe we're seniors now. And, like, I know it's kind of cliche when people tell you it flies by, but it really does. I just saw last year there's such a difference between being an upperclassman and an underclassman, because I feel like as an underclassman, like freshman, sophomore, you're really analyzing like a lot of what those older kids are doing almost, and like you're really just following by lead. And I think, stepping into this stage of my life, like I'm not as conscious of that, I guess, because I'm on the other side of it now. But I think it's important that all of us, and even like any juniors and seniors, like just to have like a positive leadership on underclassmen, because you're not going to really realize the impact that you have ever almost, but just the little things I think will definitely influence like how people see what's okay and what's not okay in social settings, anything like that. So I think just stepping into the shoes of leadership now, I think you really have to be conscious of that.
So with that acknowledgement that leadership is sort of the mantle that you guys are all beginning to take up now, let's have a little bit of discussion about the manosphere. And, I think by all measures, there's been a resurgence in interest, engagement, maybe even active following of the manosphere by boys and young men, not only around the U.S., but I think around the world. And, can we have a little bit of discussion about, are you seeing that in your own communities? And what can you, as potential student leaders, sort of do to sort of offset or combat that?
I can definitely say that recently men have been like getting a lot more just like radicalized is probably a word for it. I know a lot of people are starting to say that men don't have as much say in like the political world or in their own households. And I think that's making certain people upset, but those people go out on like social media and then just get other men riled up. Like people like Andrew Tate, a lot of young boys have been kind of answering his call, even though that they really don't know anything what it's like to be a real man and all those types of things. And I feel like young men, like we were talking about earlier, how Alex talked to us in 8th grade, it could have been the other way around. A figure who had charisma could have told us to do a bunch of bad things, and we probably could have thought those were the right things to do. And I think with social media and everything that we see and consume, it's been a lot easier to manipulate like young men's mindsets just in general.
Yeah, I think it's, well, recently I've been noticing my younger brother, who is going into 8th grade this year. I've been noticing him coming home and saying stuff like, just like rude, just being a jerk. And like it's like really like I see it on TikTok, like the stuff he says of just like pretty much quoting like these socially constructed masculinity like influencers, like, and I think it's important to recognize like the real size of like the impact. When you say young men, you're not only talking about the captain of the varsity football team, like you are really talking about middle schoolers. And like my brother's a sweet kid, and I'm seeing him be affected and influenced by that because realistically after like 6th grade, most young men are very, very impressionable. And I just think everyone needs to recognize like that this isn't a high school issue. This is below and above. Like really everyone is affected by this.
Yeah, adding on to what Nathan and Eli said, like as you're going through middle school, you absorb so much information that you think is true because you have a role model, someone that you look up to that tells you this and you believe it. When you see middle schoolers or young men just scrolling on their phones for so long, all that information they're just absorbing, and it's formulating who they are as a person. And I don't think that's right for what our the next generation of men should have to experience. They should experience positive role models that reaffirm what a real man is, instead of reaffirming the socially constructed masculinity that so many people believe.
I mean, also kind of like to add on, I feel like there's even been a resurgence with people. Like there's Andrew Tate now, and that's kind of more like a newer thing. But I've also noticed like a regain in popularity for like the Marlboro Man, and kind of like his like macho personality. You know, he's a cowboy, he's tough, and like there's been a lot of like idolizing of things like that, even though that was kind of a past thing and we are moving past that. But as people like Andrew Tate have come along, it's kind of been normalized again.
Yeah, Hugh, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's interesting, like talking about the idea of manipulating mindsets, because I feel like on social media, like everything that people are absorbing right now, like TikTok, Instagram, Reels, whatever, is all in like short clips. And I think like I've seen like debate clips or clips of Andrew Tate and like even like Charlie Kirk, like where clips are taken that kind of display them winning, like an argument or debate. And I think like the idea of winning in that sense really can affect people's minds, especially younger, impressionable minds that are really forming opinions, because what that's going to do to them is show them, what's quote unquote right in that sense, and what's that like dominant mindset that they should be following. Another thing is that this summer I did like a research project on masculinity in media. So I looked at like 6 studies across like video games, television, social media, everything that people absorb. And obviously the most dominant message was that socially constructed masculinity shows up in every single one of those forms. And we're kind of like at this crossroads where it's like, what can we do from here? Because I think that there's no real way to stop media, but I think it's or stop these media narratives that have continued and been around since like whenever TV was around. But I think what we can do is just have more conversations around it, because I think that's what's lacking in schools and these educational settings that we can really take advantage of. So yeah, that's, I guess, my takeaway.
So I want to call this episode a call to action for our young people, our students. And I want to sort of challenge each one of you now to tell me one thing, at least one thing, that you want to accomplish over the next academic year to make that positive impact in terms of your peer group, your family unit, your school community, other communities that you exist in? Tell me something that you will challenge yourself, possibly to get out of your comfort zone, to sort of challenge and lead in your communities.
So next year, Eli and I are doing the school year abroad in Italy with a program called School Year Abroad. And I don't know what to expect for the masculinity scene there in a different country, but I'm challenging myself that no matter the scene, no matter how many people have an older mindset about masculinity, like I'm gonna stand up for what I know is right, and really try to talk to as many people as I can, no matter how different they may seem, no matter how, just like stand up for what I believe in.
And all three of us, since we go to GDS, Hugh, I'm sure you know, GDS has like a really good health curriculum, and obviously we've had the summit for a long time, and there's been a lot of awareness. But kind of like how we were talking about earlier for how Alex spoke to us in 8th grade, a goal of ours has been to kind of change middle school education in DC and get more of these young guys talking about it just early enough so that when they hear about it, they actually have it set in their minds, because they haven't really decided what they're going to be, what type of the person they're going to be. And I think it's really just important to get to those young men. And I would say that's a goal of ours, and else to get out of our comfort and talk to those young guys.
Yeah, so Eli and Nathan will be leaving me here in DC. So I'm going to be the head of BLB at GDS. So I'm just going to really challenge myself to spread the message to more younger, as many freshmen and sophomores as I can. I've met a couple of the freshmen for this year because I'm doing the golf team. So I've met some of them, and there's a little bit of work to do, I'd say. And I'm just going to be trying to spread the message and help them understand how the media is affecting their personality, affecting what they think, and I want them to really understand what socially constructed masculinity is.
So I noticed Aaron said that when he's talking to these freshmen that there's work to do. And I think we can all relate to that, because around like a few months ago, we gave like a workshop just like we would in the Consent Summit to some 8th graders. And it was like hard to get through to them because, you know, these conversations aren't comfortable for most people. They don't really have them often. And a great way we were just able to break through to the boys was, when was the last time you cried? That's something that Alex always says, that, you know, we'll say something funny sometimes about like a movie, or, you know, we'll talk about something more personal. And that's just a good way to get to those guys. And I know that once we asked that and told them the last time we cried, it got a lot easier to talk with them, and they kind of broke through a little bit.
Yeah. So as it started off very rough, that meeting, they were all talking, and I'm pretty sure the only reason that they came was for the pizza. But as the meeting went on, and as we asked that question, and I went first for when I told them when the last time I cried was, and that I realized how much that helped them open up once they saw an older person, someone that they could look up to, is telling them the last time they cried, being vulnerable to them. It helped them be vulnerable back. So yeah.
That's wonderful, guys. Thanks for sharing. And Hugh, how about yourself entering senior year?
Well, I think I mentioned, like, I'm leading the Riverdale Consent Summit next year. So I think, you know, last year is like the first year was founded, and we only really had Riverdale kids there, mostly upperclassmen as well. But I feel like I want to take that a step further, bring in other schools. You know, I don't want to be like too ambitious with it, but I think we could definitely have like local schools in my area. There are 2 other schools right near Riverdale that I think would be willing to participate if, you know, GDS would want to come. I think that'd be a next step. But I want to not only do that, but also get the younger kids involved too, potentially middle schoolers. I think Eli was mentioning, because I think that's the age where like these perceptions are molded, and it's a little harder to get past that, when you're in high school. But yeah, I just want to use that consent summit to broaden my reach and reach people from across other schools and ages.
Well, I cannot tell you how proud I am of all of you for sort of the activism and the leadership that you're showing in your respective communities. I've watched all of you over the last several years just so proactively engage and absorb and then take to heart all the things that we've been talking about. And what I love is a lot of times you guys lead the discussions, right? Because what we're trying to solve for is a lot of the challenges that our young people are facing, today. And we just talked on a recent podcast with a guest about the topic of the power of compounding, right? So, the example I think he gave is, would you rather have $2 million now or 1 penny doubled every day for a month? And my math is not my strong point, despite my career choice. But obviously, the correct answer is the compounding penny, answer. But the imagery of that, right? Not starting with one big hunk, but just doing little by little to bring change. And he very kindly, linked that to our organization, I Have the Right To, and the work that we've done. And what I'm seeing here in this conversation is the power of compounding, right? 4 academic years ago, visiting GDS and talking to a bunch of little squirty 8th graders, right? And about a message that I didn't know if you guys were listening to at all. And coming, I won't say full circle, but, coming so far to see you guys as rising juniors and taking these messages and delivering them yourselves to 8th graders at your school shows amazing leadership and your commitments, going forward to bring about change, even though it might not be the popular thing to do. It might be a challenging thing to do. This is what the world needs more of. And I certainly hope that, and I'll be by your side through this whole journey, but I hope other adults pick up the mantle as well. But we can't control that. You guys can only control what you can do. So I love the initiative that you guys are showing. Hugh, I have the pleasure of working very frequently with you on these podcasts, and seeing the growth since we first met, several years ago, to birthing the concept of the podcast during an internship with the GDS boys in DC, and seeing the impact of our podcast and the people that we're reaching, the topics we're talking about. So I'd like our audience to listen to this. If you're a student, the power of compounding is real. And the impact that you can make is absolutely one that can be measured and is one that is needed, because social media is drowning our society right now. And we do need voices to offset that and examples. You guys have all talked about role models, the importance of role models. Well, I think each one of you, Hugh, Nathan, Aaron, Eli, are role models now, right? And you guys, I want to acknowledge that to you. But also, I want to send a message to the adults who are listening to this podcast. Whether you're a dad, a coach, a teacher, a member of a community, we need role models. That's the message that came across from every one of our members here today. It is important for us to see people who stand up for what is right, who are connected with their values and are willing to live by them every day. So I am grateful for this time together, because I've learned a lot from all of my engagements with you guys. And we do have our work cut out for us going forward. But I have a heck of a lot more confidence in our future with young men like you in our society continuing to speak up. And hopefully we can get more of you to join us in the audience to say, reach out to us on Instagram at IHaveTheRightTo.org or through other social media platforms and our website, IHaveTheRightTo.org. We want to hear from you. We want to support you. We want to build community. So I am going to wrap things up here today, but any closing words from anyone?
I would also say if you thought this was interesting and you like this podcast, I would also tell you to check out the GDS Consent Summit as well with the Riverdale Consent Summit. I don't know if you guys have an Instagram yet or anything like that, but I would definitely say that everyone should check those out. You guys got it.
Yeah, and just to further that commercial, the GDS Summit takes place on the Saturday before Thanksgiving every year, so that is coming up fast and furious. And the Riverdale Summit will most likely happen in the spring of 2026, so please keep on the lookout for that. That is in New York City. So there are growing opportunities, and we are working with schools across the country. Last year, we reached over 30,000 students, and we are happy to engage with you. If any of your listeners want to have our organization come and speak at your school, we would love nothing more than to do that. You can access us through info@IHaveTheRightTo.org. That's our email, or through our website. But we need to keep this compounding effect going forward. So, Hugh, do you want to close us out here?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, understand your impact. You know, the conversation we've had today, being upperclassmen and even being, an underclassman, understand what you're absorbing and understand not only how it's impacting you, but also other people around you. I'll definitely take that into senior year as well.
I'd also like to challenge everybody that is listening to this podcast to have one difficult conversation with a new person every single day, because I feel like that's how you will actually spread change and create change.
Excellent recommendation, and that's a great point for us to close out on. So thank you for joining us today. Another wonderful episode of Aspire. And I look forward to continuing this important dialogue with you, our audience. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. Like and subscribe to the podcast on all platforms. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends about Aspire. Follow us on social media at I Have the Right To. Learn more about our student and executive programming at our website at IHaveTheRightTo.org.